Now, there are very many intelligent Kenyans who believe that the deep state is a myth. It doesn't exist. Still, my advice is, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you believe that the deep state is after you, the deep state has you in their crosshairs, then it is very important for you to understand what you're dealing with. And in understanding what you're dealing with, you have to be super cautious. Okay? Then the other thing you need to know is that the usual things that would work in an ordinary situation will not work with the deep state. Let me give you an example. The late Chris Msando, months before he was murdered, reported that there are people who had called him threatening his life. And what did he do? He did the ordinary thing anybody would do. He walked into the Central Police Station and made a reported it. If the late Chris Msando had known or had realized that he was dealing with the deep state, then the course of action would have been very different. He would have immediately known that going to the police station is a waste of time. The only course of action in such a situation is to remove yourself completely from the environment where you're a threat. Let me just leave it at that. Now, coming back to the situation of Mike Sonko, he needs to tread very carefully if it is true that he's dealing with the deep state. And sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes a trap can be set for you. And you can walk right into it because you're dealing with very intelligent people with massive resources at their beck and call. Now, that combination of brains and money is virtually unbeatable. Still, you can make an effort to avoid traps. Now, what am I talking about? The Star newspaper has today carried a story on Mike Sonko, dating back to 2002. And the story is based on a court ruling. Now, in this court ruling, Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko was serving a 1-year jail term in Mombasa. And he appealed for his jail term to be shortened. And he succeeded. It was shortened and he was released after only 9 months. He didn't serve the remaining 3 months. What was the reason? The reason was medical grounds. Now, I have to tread very carefully here because of legal issues. Now, the very latest in connection to that story is that Mike Sonko, through his lawyer, Cecil Miller, has demanded an apology from the Star newspaper within 3 days, failure of which he will seek legal redress. He'll go to court to seek damages and compensation. Okay? Now, there's some very interesting legal issues here. Let me just try and simplify them. Now, if you report on something which the court ruled on, which is in court papers, how would now somebody turn around and sue you? I'll tell you how. They would sue you for making their medical records public, which is illegal in most parts of the world. In case you didn't know, medical doctors cannot even share your medical report with the employer without your permission. There was a very interesting case in Germany a few years ago where a pilot, a first officer, had a very serious medical condition that would directly affect his job as a pilot. And this man had shown clear signs of very deep depression. In fact, he was virtually almost clinically insane. Now, one would think, for the sake of public safety, that the doctors treating this man would rush to the employer of this man and report this. They didn't. The law could not allow them to. And this story ends very tragically. Because the first officer on a flight, was alone in the cabin. The pilot had gone to relieve himself. In those days you could open the cabin, separating the pilot and the passengers. Now there are much more stringent security procedures. And when the pilot returned, he found he had been locked out. Meanwhile, this first officer had been doing things in the controls of the aircraft, carrying over 200 passengers. He adjusted the aircraft to go on a slight, gradual, constant descent, to come down gradually. Now, of course, the aircraft was heading towards some mountains. And from outside the cockpit, the pilot could see this. And they banged on the door, and they tried everything to get into the cockpit. Of course, they were unsuccessful. And the aircraft crashed into a mountain and killed everybody on board. Yep, somebody's personal medical records are a very big issue. Now, of course, since then, the German government has tried to adjust the law, so that in extreme cases, whereby the lives of other people are involved, this law can be broken. They can actually reveal medical records of a first officer or a pilot who may be a threat to passengers. However, I'm sure you get my point. So that is the story. Now, in my view, Mike Sonko should tread very carefully, because this could be a trap. And I'll tell you how it's a trap. Most Kenyans know how things work in Kenya. If you want to get something done, you go with your money. Your money speaks for you. And you bribe somebody. Now, once you've bribed that person to do what you want them to do, they have to find a way to do it. Now, for instance, if it's a court of law, and you approach somebody to assist you, they'll have to find a way of legally, getting you the release that you're asking for. For instance, if it's a release you're asking for. I'm talking about a hypothetical situation so that we understand the Mike Sonko situation. I'm not talking about the Mike Sonko situation. So that person may decide that, of course, in consultation with maybe a corrupt judge, they may decide that the best way to do it is to seek a release for you before you complete your sentence on medical grounds, which is allowed legally. And then they would have to find a disease that is fatal. A disease that means that you will die. You can die at any time. Maybe even before you complete your jail term. That disease could be cancer. That disease could be HIV/AIDS. Although in the second example, I don't think that's still the case. However, you get what I'm trying to say. Because no judge can just say, I release so-and-so because I feel like releasing them. No, there has to be some legal ground. So that is what happens in Kenya. Okay? Now, back to the Mike Sonko case. In case he goes ahead and sues this newspaper, for revealing his medical records, somebody somewhere, like the deep state using people, could file a completely different case. They could file a case saying that the release was illegal and that there was some corruption and bribery involved in that release. And they could even wait to use Mike Sonko's own evidence, that actually he does not have any disease that is fatal. Because those were the grounds under which he was released earlier than he was supposed to be released. I'm sure you get what I'm trying to say. This could easily be a trap for the Nairobi governor. I also find it super fascinating that somebody is digging so deep into the past of Mike Sonko. Why? Why now? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. And especially for those of us who believe that the deep state is a myth, doesn't exist, those are questions that you really need to urgently ask yourself and find an answer to. If you want to still stick to your position that this thing is a myth. Dark forces don't exist. Dark forces within any government in the world do not exist. That is just pure fiction. You see that in the movies. It's not in real life. If you want to stick to that position, in my view, those are questions you need to answer very quickly. What all this tells us is that the Mike Sonko saga has just started. we ain't seen nothing yet. It has just started. Now, of course, there's a lot more clarity over this issue in my weekly intelligence briefs, which I mentioned in my last video. And unfortunately, they're not free. There's a charge for the weekly intelligence briefs. The subscription for a year, well worth it, I assure you, is $100. Because we discuss highly super sensitive stuff in the weekly intelligence briefs. And we give you all the latest information I receive, a lot of which I don't use on the channel. And membership for the weekly intelligence briefs is very limited. Obviously. And we're not even actively seeking out members. We're not looking for 1,000 members. We're not even looking for 500 members. This is a very small group that can get this privileged information that I cannot use on the main channel. That's how the weekly intelligence briefs works. Now, already on your screens, I'm sure you've seen information on how to get all the details you need to become a member. For those who can manage, that is very critical information for you to understand exactly what is going on with this Mike Sonko manenos. In my view, in Kenyan politics and in our situation currently, this is a major game changer. And it points to what could happen in the future, not good things. And that is why my advice to all of us is to keep a very close eye on these Sonko developments. And to endeavor to read between the lines. Don't take things at face value. Because there are some very smart people, smart and experienced people out there who want to force us to think in a certain direction. Away from the truth. Away from what is really happening. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.